Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This video I will entitle Is the Grass Greener on the Other Side? This is dedicated to all traditional women out there, traditional wives, Muslim women who follow traditional roles, and mothers and wives, basically, who are by and large at home, who don't have jobs possibly, and who wonder if they were to pursue a different path, how would life have turned out? You watch television or you meet women out and about in the world who, have thriving careers, who are free, who don't need to ask their husband's permission, before they go anywhere. And you wonder, like, wouldn't that be amazing to be able to do that? I mean, why do you need all this traditionalism? It's a question. I mean, it's a valid question that people ask, and wonder about, who come from traditional homes and traditional families. And so let's contrast the two worlds, the world of freedom and independence, where women are free to do what they want, and be independent and financially look after themselves, etc. And then the world of dependent women, traditional women who are housewives and raising children and are reliant on their husbands, etc. So let's compare these two worlds, and the question is the grass greener on the other side? So from the traditional Muslim woman perspective, she might think, look, I was young, I got married, the only man I knew really ever in life, was or is my husband, because that was the first man I really spoke to, and then that's the man I married. I got married as a virgin, so I didn't really have experience, and now I'm with this man, and only this man, possibly forever. I have kids and I'm at home, and I'm just curious about what my life might have been like, were I given a different set of parameters, or were I able to make different choices for myself? That's on the one hand, okay? Then you find the woman who has dedicated her life to her career, has been free to engage in multiple sexual relationships or any type of relationships she saw fit, focused on her career, is independent, has her own money, doesn't need a man to look after financially anyway, but need men to look after sexually and emotionally, engages with several men, because obviously if you have a sense of independence and you are able to attract men, you won't necessarily see the need to be loyal to any one particular man. And yeah, freedom, basically. So there's that woman also. And then sometimes that woman again looks at the traditional woman who has a husband that looks after her, has a home, has a family, has kids, and she, somewhere in her heart, she envies, that, she's like, I wish I could have that. And is the grass greener on the other side? That's kind of the question we're asking. And so let's draw it out a bit, let's draw it out a bit. Everything works with pros and cons. There are ups and downs to both sides, and I'm going to try to paint a picture here for you, right? Okay, what first for the Muslim woman, the Muslim traditional housewife, okay? First, this is a stereotype that's not necessarily true. A lot of Muslim traditional women are not housewives. They do have jobs, they are doctors, they are lawyers, they have thriving careers, and they also married and also have kids and have help at home, to do the traditional housewife stuff in their absence, kind of thing. They have servants or what have you, okay? So it's a stereotype, but let's just go with the stereotype, right? What are the downsides? Okay, the downside is when you're a traditional Muslim woman and you have a home and a family and you're dependent on a man, etc., you are also held accountable to some extent to the man, that is your husband, and you are being guarded by your husband, and so as a result, possibly your movements are being tracked by your husband. Possibly you gotta, in some instances, ask permission to go to certain places where you think he might disapprove of, and also you might have to, uh, consider him when dealing with other men, how you speak to them. Are you being modest? Are you being flirtatious and things like that, so as not to unduly or unnecessarily piss your husband off, because then there'll be trouble. So there's those type of things, right? Your life is mitigated by your regard for your husband, who is also your caretaker, also looking after you. And so you are not, you are basically to some extent at the mercy of your husband's discretion, okay, which for a woman that is independent can feel rather unsettling, but for traditional women whose mothers were like that and their mothers were like that, and it's kind of just, goes with the territory, I guess. And women like that, obviously, who are at the discretion of their husbands, are really not entirely at the discretion of their husbands, because they do put up a hell of a fight, and they can make life very inconvenient for their husbands if their husbands don't toe their line. And so, first misconception is that Muslim women, just because they are reliant and dependent on their husband, doesn't mean they don't hold clout. They do. Many Muslim men are terrified of their wives. Okay? Even though she is dependent on him financially, he's very dependent on her emotionally, and he's dependent on her for the comfort that she provides him. He calls her home. The place she is called home, and everyone wants to go home. So Muslim women do often hold a lot of clout. But there are those drawbacks, right? A Muslim woman, traditional Muslim woman, can't, for example, decide at any given time that, look, I'm gonna go hang out with the neighbor's husband and go for coffee, for example, or I'm gonna just, call up an old boyfriend and just, spend the weekend with him or the week with him. Actually, I don't think almost any wife can do that. Forget about Muslim, just in general, right? But she can't basically do that. And if she does that, she risks a lot. She risks her home and her family and being destitute. And so the leverage the man has over her is a lot greater than an independent career woman that is otherwise free to do what she wants, based on the fact that the man doesn't have that much leverage over her. And so should she decide to just walk out, well, she can, basically, because she feels she's not financially dependent on him, and she can just set up a life somewhere else or in some other way or with someone else, etc. Okay, so what are the drawbacks to being the independent, free career woman? Well, the drawbacks is that although she's independent financially and free, she is often lonely. She lacks the deep bond that most traditional couples feel for each other, and so she's constantly looking for something because she's missing that thing, and that thing is a natural thing, and so she knows deep down within herself that it's lacking. So what she does often is that most of these strongly independent career women are often alone. They're often single. They aren't able to maintain long-term committed relationships, because, well, they do not feel that they are in a position where they need to tolerate anything in a man that they may not like. And no man is perfect, and so every man that she's with will have flaws that she may feel that she does not necessarily have to tolerate given her independence, she can just put him out of her home and just move on to the next guy. So she's just touch and go, touch and go, touch and go. So um, she doesn't have the long-term thing happening for her, or the deeply emotional, fulfilling, loving, caring relationship that other women who are traditional women experience as per the cause, mostly. Okay. The other thing is that the independent woman is often sought after, highly sought after, by opportunistic men who are looking to dig into her pockets, use her money, or have otherwise just have casual sex with her, because she is often, because of her sense of independence, she is left unprotected, meaning there are no other men around her trying to guard her from the evil of men who will be trying to use her. So you will often find staunchly independent, career-oriented women constantly being used by less than desirable losers, men who are just trying to use them. So that happens. That doesn't easily happen with a traditional married woman, because the traditional married woman has a husband who guards the door. So men, knowing that she has a husband, they tend to back off from her, and or otherwise, if she doesn't play her part well as a wife and she doesn't guard herself properly, then of course she could easily have an affair. But that would be obviously with only the lowest of men, because the vast majority of men would pass over a married woman, would not try to mislead a married woman, because man to man, men know that is extremely, extremely below the belt. Okay, but you get men, of course, who just don't care and will just pursue a married woman regardless, and do whatever he wants to with her. Okay, that happens to, it does happen. Very low men in the world, may God send them all to hell, and let them burn there forever. Anyway, so so these are kind of the cons. Okay, so the one woman, the traditional woman, she's not free entirely. She can't just do whatever she wants to, but she is more or less fulfilled in her role as a mother and a wife. The other woman is free; she can do whatever she wants to. Whatever money can buy her, and her freedom and her friends and all of that. But she's often more or less unfulfilled in her role, because the instinct to nurture, the instinct to belong, uh, the instinct to have stability and a stable relationship and all of that usually pervades her, because usually the men who surround these types of women are less than desirable men. Okay, the more responsible and desirable men go for women that they can look after, and that can make a home with them. Okay, the less desirable men tend to target the staunchly independent woman, because they're not looking for anything permanent, and they are just looking to dig into her pockets basically, and use her money basically for their stuff. Those are the kinds of men that usually go for the staunchly independent woman. So, is the grass greener on the other side? I would say no. No, it's not. Okay? Your traditional, well-guarded housewife or Muslim woman who dedicates herself to marriage, to a man, to a family, is guarded and protected, and because she's guarded and protected, she's allowed to be vulnerable and to make herself vulnerable and to experience femininity in its fullest, because no one in her environment is going to take advantage of her vulnerability, because the only people or the only men around her are men who have vested interest in her protection and her well-being. They love and care for her and are not interested in using her, that being her husband and her father and her uncles and her brothers and so on. They all have a vested interest in her well-being. So she's not exposed and out there, and so men are not able to take advantage of her or prey on her in any way, the men being like vultures in that regard. um, the woman, the career woman, the staunchly independent woman, at the end of the day, what you gotta remember is that she's still a woman, okay? So she's still vulnerable, and she's still exposed, and she can still easily be taken advantage of, because she is, at the end of the day, still a woman, and it just needs a little bit of flattery and saying the right words and knowing how to get in her head to get her to do what you want her to do, and to take her money, and to sleep with her a few times, and then to dump her. So the staunchly independent woman, while she may be able to do what she wants, the price of her freedom is basically her happiness. It's ironically, okay? So yes, she's free, but the price of that freedom is her happiness. She's not allowed to be a woman, basically, because she has to constantly guard herself against being taken advantage of. And even while trying to guard herself against being taken advantage of, she still gets taken advantage of. Okay? Um, Whereas the traditional woman doesn't have that problem. She doesn't have to guard herself because she's being guarded, and she's allowed to experience her femininity in full. And obviously, that also comes at a price, that she does not have as much freedom, and she doesn't have the same level of independence that a career oriented, independent woman has. And then, obviously, in the long term, of course, the housewife, the traditional Muslim woman, the guarded woman, the woman who's under the guard, who is with a husband who looks after her, etc., also has the long-term benefit of having many kids, and the kids grow up, and the kids help look after their mother, and she has family and grandkids and all of that. So when she gets old, she's also in a better position. Okay, she's not going to be relegated to an old age home, where when she can no longer look after herself, because there are plenty of people who are going to look after her. So that also, in the long term, the traditional woman is better off. Okay, where there are drawbacks, and where probably we need to find some sort of balance between the two, is when a woman marries a man who is not responsible, who's not going to look after her, and who is going to abuse her, in which case her vulnerability is now exploited by her husband, who is supposed to be the one protecting her, not exploiting her. Then the fact that she lacks independence becomes a negative aspect of her existence, because now she's subjected to a man who is going to harm her instead of look after her. And then she can't leave that situation, perhaps because she's financially dependent on the man and there is no one else to look after her. So I think, there are definitely cases where woman being independent, is beneficial, but then there are definitely cases where that independence is prioritized too much, and freedom is prioritized too much, and then the price of that freedom is the lack of long-term committed relationships, family, children, protection, against vultures, men who are vultures, who are trying to just prey on women, etc. So is the grass greener on the other side? No, it's not. Okay, the traditional Muslim woman, the traditional Christian woman, the traditional woman of this world are still, by and large, much, much better off than other women. They are happier, they are more fulfilled in their roles, and the only time they feel the sense of this great dissatisfaction is when they are simply curious about what life might have been like on the outside, on the other side. And what I want to tell you, the traditional Muslim woman, is that so too are people who follow different life patterns and different life modes, envious of you, in the sense that they would have also perhaps liked to have what you have. But the problem is they're not willing to pay the price that you've paid for it, which is that you've given up a lot of your independence to be able to do what you do. And may Allah reward you and bless you for your great sacrifices. Thank you very much.